Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the late summer. We've now moved into sort of the late summer.
Are we, am I imagining things, or are we just starting to see that time shift with the daylight starting to move a little bit?
Yeah, daylight's coming back. It's across 8:30 now. It's in the 8:20s, and it's after 6. Sunrise is back on the other side of 6. So those days are shortening from both ends.
Yeah. I was like, I like those long days.
I love the long days, and that's why there's this daylight savings time bill. Did we do? I don't think we've talked about.
We talked about it last week about how you want it to stay the way it is, right?
I think we've got it right.
Yeah.
A few things in America we can unequivocally say that about, but others disagree.
Well, maybe it'll just die a quiet death overall. I mean, who knows? So this is episode number 360. Am I 368? Did I get the right number? Or so 369? I got to double check that. Yeah, it's on the website. So if I didn't update that number, I'll fix it by the time I post it. I have one job.
But it's a biggie.
Yeah. Trying to keep track of all this stuff. Okay. All right. It is National Chicken Wing Day. What's your thoughts?
I'm not a chicken wing guy. Marty loves them, but it's like that's a lot of work for not a lot of meat. They're sitting there trying to not choke on those little bitty bones, and
so you'd be more for like ribs.
Yeah. Stuff like, well, see, ribs it's kind of the same thing. Ribs is not a great investment of your time either. But like chicken, like the little chicken nuggets.
Yeah, chicken nuggets are easy, but so here there'll always be this debate to me. It's like whether or not are the boneless chicken wings really chicken wings, right? That became the big thing, and then they revealed that it's actually not a chicken wing.
But every single chicken has bones in the wing.
But they never. But so they still use that. It's still very effective in marketing. So now you have basically, boneless or bone in, type of a thing like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine with them. But I kind of agree. It's a lot of work for a little meat. See, the reason I mentioned the ribs is just that if you go to a good enough, rib place, the meat will almost fall off the bone.
Right, that's right.
So you don't really have to do a lot of work. It is already doing the work for you. You pick it up or whatever, and stuff will just kind of come off.
Yeah. Messy but doable. Yeah,
messy but doable. I'm probably just a nerd or something like that. Most of the time, I just I don't even pick them up. I usually just cut it up and just knock it off there, because it usually is very easy just to go ahead and just take a fork or whatever, and it'll come right off, and I pick it up and I just eat it that way, and I keep my hands from getting too messy. I don't know.
The chicken wing, I would say two things about it. One is, like, this is a thing that almost didn't exist 20 years ago.
Right.
It's now a huge part. There's whole restaurants devoted to it and everything, whole chains, So it is. Somebody's done a pretty good marketing job, found a way to sell chicken, right? Whatever parts they actually are. And the other thing is, like, I went to eat with this guy. You're talking about ribs in Hartford, Connecticut one night, and it was there was a few of us, and we were eating, and this guy ordered all you can eat ribs, and he ate ribs for almost 4 hours. Right, and the restaurant's finally like, okay. You're not hungry anymore, cousin. You gotta go. Right, but he almost 4 hours. Like, I ate, I'm sitting there, I had dessert, I'm sitting there long time, we're all talking everything, and this guy is one plate of ribs after another. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I mean, we still have buffets lying around of various sorts. And there used to be a lot more of like the seafood buffets where people would just pile it on and everything like that. But all of that stuff is, food has gotten expensive. None of that stuff is cheap anymore.
That's right.
But as you mentioned, Buffalo Wild Wings, Wingstop, they've created entire businesses off of that. And the pizza chains offer that, Domino's, I think, and Pizza, and these other guys, if you want chicken wings, you can order chicken wings with your pizza. So yeah, it's a mammoth industry. I don't know what the value of chicken wings are that have been sold in the country on an annual basis, but it's huge.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's now, it's not just the chicken wings, it's all about the sauce.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, it's really a sauce thing. It's just a vehicle to put the sauce on. But yeah.
I mean, my wife and I were at Raising Cane's for our just about monthly visit, and it's like, it's all, the chicken strips are, over there, they're I guess they're called chicken fingers. They're amazing. And that sauce they have is wonderful. Stuff I should not probably be eating that stuff. But boy,
guys.
That stuff is just hard to not eat. That is, to me, that is like the top chicken that I get. So yeah,
you can say what you want, but the world looks to Louisiana for fried chicken. Like Popeyes is there, those guys. Like
but I mean,
everyone starts doing it.
Raising Cane's elevated the whole thing. Because you had KFC forever, right? That's what we grew up with.
Right.
Popeyes comes along and offers a different style of chicken, but Raising Cane's, it's just amazing. I mean, Chick-fil-A sells a ton of chicken, but it doesn't compare to what Raising Cane's does. And I look at these different restaurants, and I kept thinking about Raising Cane's yesterday because the location it's in Columbia, it had all the chicken business it wanted, right? And then in the parking lot comes a Chick-fil-A, which opened about 3 months ago. Then on the other side, a Pollo Campero, which is the Latin, the Mexican, they open on the other side. I'm like, you have 3 different types of chicken all in a row like this? He's like, who thought this was a good idea except for the landlord who's going to be collecting rent, overall. I mean, maybe he gets the same amount, or maybe gets a little bit more rent out of that, but every chicken restaurant that opens up next to each other cannibalizes the other guy.
Yeah.
Right. No, it doesn't really bring in more business per se. But Raising Cane's for the last couple months, after Chick-fil-A opened, the business at Raising Cane's when we went there seemed to have dropped off a little bit. Yesterday it looked really good, which was good. But I keep thinking about Raising Cane's has done the other thing about it, not just because the chicken is good, is that they stick to a very limited menu. They do chicken fingers, and they do, they'll sell you a coleslaw. They'll sell, the Texas toast is part of the meal deal. They can buy more of that. You got the Raising Cane sauce, and that's pretty much it. Even their chicken sandwich, I didn't really realize until yesterday because my wife asked me about the chicken sandwich, and so I look up on the menu board, and it's not a sandwich like a patty. It's 3 chicken fingers that they throw lettuce and the sauce on. It's like, so that's it. Their kitchen operation is that. And you get soft drinks, fine. You got the soda fountain, but there's no desserts, no shakes, nothing else. It is chicken, coleslaw, Texas toast, French fries, which are really good too. So, that's about it.
That's kind of become a sort of a secret for these guys. Like, Five Guys. This is kind of the same thing. They do very few things very well, and they don't try to do anything else.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. If you stick to that and don't go too far afield, I think you do better overall. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Enough about the fast food industry and everything.
Now I'm hungry. Meal break.
Yeah, now that now you're hungry. All right. So I guess we'll come back to this. These all things interrelate. So, Iran, we're on again, we're off again. It depends upon things. I mean, I think Trump is mad. He's getting more upset as things go along about how this is going. I think he's got some issues with Bibi about how this is going and whether or not they should have done this to begin with. They haven't achieved their goals. They were looking at a 4 or 5 week operation based on what I guess Netanyahu had told them, and it's now a 5-month operation plus. You and I have both said, though, I think that this thing has got to end. We've got to hit an end point here, because it's not going to be helpful to the election, because it pushes up oil prices, which pushes up gas prices, which makes everything more expensive. And when voters feel the pinch, that's one thing a lot of them will look at, come November or whenever they vote.
Well, whenever they, that's true.
It's an open-ended thing now. I was like, I don't even, you'd have to look. You not both know. You have to look state by state to try to figure. It's like, when the heck do they start voting? Because it's different in every state, and it just like, I'm not even going to try. I mean, you will need a spreadsheet, or or you run a chat bot, or AI, and say, give me a chart of how the voting works in every state. Where's the early voting? When does when do they get the mail-in ballots? All this stuff, because this is when you have 50 states with 50 different sets of rules. It's all over the map. We know the quote final election day is in November, but you also have that slide where they can still get the ballots in as long as they were postmarked by election night. So there's still some vagaries there too. So it's just this whole election thing has gotten out of hand.
Right. So go back to the order of these things. First of all, Iran. So he wants to be able to tell Bibi when to jump in and jump out, and Bibi's not entirely down with that. And okay, if I was a head of state, I wouldn't be wanting to work on other people's schedule either, when I have the assets to do some of this myself. But to maintain world opinion, the Israelis have enough problems with that already. Being falsely accused of genocide and all this nonsense in Gaza and whatnot. So they're getting those two guys on the same page is its own challenge, right? I think they are to the point where they don't care about negotiating really anymore. The negotiations are all kind of a ruse. They're trying to line up. I believe they've attracted some support from Germany. Germany may be in a war for the first time since World War II. Very soon, the UK has offered some help, and some others. So, I think what Trump is trying to do is get the firepower there to make one push and finish it, or one relatively short period of burst of activity that finishes it. I think he has decided correctly, in my view, that this regime, we're not dealing with them. We're getting them eliminated, and we're worried about the next one. That's why you saw they're back to going after where these guys are holding their meetings and bombing the meeting places, and tracking their movements and bombing them when they move and so forth. So I think that's where they're headed. There we're going to decapitate the leadership, and then we're going to give you a chance to find some new leaders that we can then deal with, right? I think the first thing was to deal with the young Ayatollah 3 or whatever he is. And I think they've since decided that, neither he nor the people around him are going to be, straight up or make any kind of deal that you can win. I mean, I thought it was a bad thing when we started talking about negotiating with them anyway. This has got to be surrender, because they're not going to honor any terms they agree to anyway. These are duplicitous.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean that's just, it has to be this kind of total and unconditional surrender.
Yeah, and as for the voting, I think it's absolutely right. You got to turn the page on some of this stuff. I think the Republicans right now are having a field day on the Hill with Anthony Fauci, which will get the base excited, right? You can say what you want about it, but it will get the base excited. His diary has come out. It revealed that basically he was a megalomaniac, that who was trying to sort of prolong all this because he was in the spotlight, and he was getting interviewed by Jennifer Roberts, and that was just the coolest. And then all the famous people he was meeting and all the great stuff he was getting to do. And like this guy, he took the money and he took the fame and fortune and did not, and since he was invested in the work at the Wuhan lab. You know, he had invested us, the taxpayers, in it. You know, he's trying to protect that work. So, you know, he's in a lot of trouble down there, and he's pleading the fifth, even though he has one of these hairpin pardons. So, you know, he must understand that there is a legal end to the protection of that pardon, and that, you know, he will be held responsible for that. Before the hearing, Rand Paul warned him that if he perjured himself, that they could prosecute that, and they would prosecute that. So I think rather than perjure himself, and he's even said this, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to take the fifth, so I don't get prosecuted for perjury. Okay, well, in other words, you intended to lie, and now they've cut you off, right? Because if you're just telling the truth, you don't care. You don't have to worry about perjury, right? And if your auto pen pardon protected, you know, the truth shouldn't hurt you, right? Whatever you did, it's over, and you've been pardoned for it.
Yeah. All right. Since you went there, we'll go there. I mean, obviously, yeah, this whole thing, this is what, it's been 1,000 or 1,100 pages out of his diary. I'd be embarrassed to see that out there, because, as you said, the megalomaniac. Yeah. I mean, his chummy relationships with the media, his self-aggrandizement about, you know, how things were going for him, you know, just and really the way he misled the American public on COVID-19. You know, just, you know, he'd say he was telling us one thing, but he was writing something different in his diary.
Right.
In essence, you know, and I know a lot of people don't like Rand Paul, and that's fine. But Rand, on this one, Rand has been fierce on this.
That's right. You know, I'm not a big Rand Paul fan either, but he has been fierce, and he's been right on this, right? He called this out from the jump, and he's been correct.
Yeah. So yeah. Yes, you said Fauci's in a lot of trouble. I mean, you plead the fifth, you know, when you've got some issues there that, you know, are really indefensible, that, you know, because you risk perjury. You know, it's too bad that, you know, we're 6 years out, you know, really from COVID, and now this is really coming out. You know, things that we knew or suspected, you know, 6 years ago, you know, are now, we can see that in some of his writings in there, and, you know, in the meantime, you know, Fauci was held up, you know, as this big hero and great guy.
They're still doing it. They're still on the, like, Twitter and TV, and right this minute, saying what a hero he was, and how dare we besmirch his name. I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't have anything to do with reality.
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, you're defending him, but have you read any of the diary pages, please?
Right. It's extraordinary that they could do this.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is, yeah, as you said, Republicans are. This is something they can really feast upon and talk about. I mean, it's something.
You know, the other side of it is he gets, you know,
This is all going about.
Yeah. So, you know, the other thing is, like, the whole, you know, edifice of public health. There's no trust in that, right? I mean, we kind of need public health. We kind of need that to work. And right now it's in complete disarray, because, you know, they've had to, you know, anybody who was parroting what he was saying can't work in this industry anymore, right? They've been discredited in the worst kind of way, and they can't even be eligible to work in this industry anymore. They must be completely excised from the body politic, or the body, or the public body on this one. So, you know, it's going to take decades to rebuild that trust, to make it where we can rely on them to do what they're supposed to do. And I think Trump's instinct to greatly reduce the budget and the function of that is a good idea. Like, most of that probably needs to be done by private people who's, you know, trying to get the drug to you that will save you, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's it's really shameful to what we had to go through for that. How many people were affected? Their health was affected as a result of the direction that, you know, that Fauci gave us. You know, it's just we won't really know the exact number for sure, but there are definitely people out there, I think, that have suffered as a result of his actions and how he had led, this whole operation, really just for his own benefit, so that he can collect the accolades and just put himself right at the top as this big champion of our public health. It's a shameful thing that we have learned about him. But I'm glad that Rand Paul is firing away at him, and then Fauci deserves everything he gets. They should just keep volleying at him, just keep throwing stuff at him, and try to see if they can't squeeze an answer out of him. But at the very least, if you're pleading the fifth all the time, I think it becomes embarrassing to a guy who had such high public stature.
Right. And I think that they find some reason, that's somebody, if he died in prison alone, would not bother me a bit.
Yeah, well,
that's what he did to other people,
Right. All right. So it's remarkable now. We're now down to 97 days to election day, the one in November.
Yeah.
Other people will be voting. People will be voting before that. So that's the 97 only goes to November. But, there's still lots of things going on here. So Lindsey Graham, there was a memorial service. There was a funeral yesterday in Washington, D.C. It was, very emotional for a lot of people. Lindsey had friends on both sides of the aisle. He had friends internationally, particularly, Zelensky, and he had a big passion about Ukraine. His death almost seems to have moved the needle a little bit on Ukraine, towards what Lindsey Graham wanted, and I keep thinking about just everything that has happened, and I thought, I can imagine that if I was at that funeral, I'd get pretty emotional too, even though I had not met the man, just because the way he died, the sudden nature of his death, and just how much I think he really cared for America and all the things that he was doing. I can see how people would get kind of emotional about that, because he wasn't a phony. He was a genuine kind of article, and everything that he had done in his life. So, he led a great life. It was unfortunately cut short, but here we have something that, his death may actually move the needle forward. I heard that Laura Loomer is, now come out and said, I've been misled. I swallowed the Russian propaganda. Someone who I don't really like very much. But she has a lot of followers in the MAGA base, right? And everything.
You know what? She does not end up being incorrect as often as some of these others too.
Right.
You got to give her that. It's like, you would think that she would, because she looks like a whack job, but that's not the case, right? She comes up with good information, and sometimes it doesn't pan out, but a lot of times it does. So I tend to let them, if she says something, let people run it to ground, before I declare it false because she said it, right? Because sometimes she's not wrong, and I think there was a lot of Russian propaganda here, and I think we stayed on the side of, when it's reasonable, we need to help them, right? We don't need to send the whole U.S. Treasury over there, or 20,000 troops or whatever, but we need to help them, and that's what we've done, and they've helped themselves. To their credit, they have taken the resources provided and they've run with it, and they're doing a pretty darn good job against the Russians. So, it's like, now the worry is sort of, is it possible for them to have too much success? And by that, I mean, if the Russians get the feeling that they're going to lose, right, not just not win quickly enough, but actually not prevail, what would they do? Because they do have some weapons that Ukraine cannot defend against and cannot overcome. And they've chosen not to use them, right, so far. And it may be because they fear reprisal, because if they obviously, if they nuke Ukraine, the whole world's coming in on them, right? Putin will not survive that. And I think he knows that. So that's why that weapon is still in the sheath. But what else do they have? What else could they do to win this war? Because they can't, I don't think he can survive politically if they don't. So, you're going to see whatever Russia has to offer on this pretty soon, because they're getting backed into a corner.
Yeah. I meant to say too earlier, as I've been watching, reading, listening, whatever, to reports on our situation in Iran, is that one of the issues I think we're running up, apparently, according to these reports, are just that, we've used so many missiles, our stockpile.
That's propaganda.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've used a lot. The defense stocks, defense companies are, they're riding high right now because they're going to be going full bore.
Yeah. We're ordering stuff. That part of it is true. We're ordering, we're using stuff, and we're ordering stuff. But the notion that we're like running out, that's stuff the left comes up with.
It's not like you can just churn one out every minute or something like that. It takes time to put together a missile. It's got guidance systems in there and a lot of tricky stuff in there. It's like this is not the bombs of old. These are now precision military, weapons that require you have to have them calibrated and everything like that. So it's not just roll them right off the factory floor. So if you fire a whole bunch at Iran or whatever, you might not be able to replace them quite as fast. It may take you a little bit longer. So supply chain is it's probably not as strong as it was before. No one was really anticipating us go to war with Iran. So it was, unless the Defense Department already had pre-stockpile a ton, which could be they're spending a lot of money, obviously on ammo, material, and everything like that, and will continue to do so until we kind of end this thing. But the modern warfare between what we're firing missile-wise as well as the drones. The drones have changed warfare. That's the way we see it in Ukraine and Russia. It's a lot of drones.
Yeah, another thing that's changing warfare is we've gone into these deals where we did F-35s, fighter jets, right? One of the most advanced fighter jets in the world, and we made it shareable, right? So we've shared them with a lot of countries, and we were supposed to have one model. We have 3 models, and people buy the different, and it's supposedly a version that doesn't quite give you all the capabilities we have. So the American one is still the best one. But Turkey has figured out how to make them themselves. So now Turkey, they're expecting to get 10 F-35s this year delivered to their Air Force, and more on the way. So, now you have somebody using, the world's best technology potentially against us, So I think that's one of the things Trump's upset with them about.
Yeah. This is not a military thing, but I just saw, it takes a long time and generally to fly overseas, like from here to Asia, for us, when we took that trip, we basically took a flight to Dallas and a flight to Korea, so flight to Dallas is 2.5 hours or whatever it is. The flight to Korea is like 15, I think 13, 14, 15. I think it's, it's quicker coming back.
Right.
But it's a long time to be spending on an airplane. But I just saw that there, I think it was a Qatar airline or something like that, or one of these guys, they're working with like Boeing or somebody or Airbus, somebody, and they did a test flight of an airplane, a passenger airplane that can fly for 24 hours.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Okay.
Like the old Pan Am 1.
This is nuts.
Going around the world.
This is crazy. I think the longest flight before had been like to Singapore, and you get like 16 plus hours or whatever from one point to the other. I can't remember which city, where we started to where we ended in Singapore. But the the idea that would go from, I think it was from Australia, to France, 24 hours. It's like they have a third fuel tank, and they have extra compartments so the crew can shift and everything like this. But it's like, if you're the passenger, okay, it's hard, sometimes it's hard enough being on a plane for 2.5 hours, then being on a plane, then when I'm on
way
a plane,
too much for me.
yeah. Well, then when I'm going to Korea or coming back, I know I'm going to be there for 12 to 15 hours. That's rough. That can be really rough. You're trying to figure out, you got to figure out a sleep pattern, and they're feeding you and doing all these things. You got to try to, your whole body's all just jumbled up. But I can't even fathom spending 24 hours on a flight. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where would you be going? Like, how would you do that?
Oh, I think the test flight I think went from Australia to Paris, and
okay.
So I don't I don't know if there'd be a lot of demand for that. Maybe there is. I don't follow all that stuff all that closely, but that's amazing to me. I think with the long Singapore flight, how many people were willing to buy and sit on a plane, that long, and it's just, I mean, it's just, and I think that's why a lot of these airlines, Delta, American, United, all these guys, that's why they've reconfigured their cabins so that it's now business class. The first class is really the old business. It's a different thing now. It's now this whole, premium thing, and then the old business class is now premium economy, which is pretty good. You pay for that, and then you go down the other levels, another 1 or 2 levels after that. But they've created, I think it's like a third or half the plane now on a lot of these airplanes is so, because you're flying so long, you're either going to be, if you pay enough money, you'll lie flat. If you pay a little bit less, you can lean back a little bit more like the first class seats used to do. And then if you're not paying much at all, you're going to be stiff as a board and, get very little food and just kind of get cramped in there. But they realize that there's a lot of money, in selling those premium seats. My son is and his wife, he sends me a text yesterday. He says, here's the deal we got. And I guess it was on American. I don't even know what airline. I wasn't paying attention. So I must have been American. I think that's where he's throwing all his miles. So for 115,000 miles for the 2 of them, I guess it was, they're going to fly to France and through Britain or something. I don't know what the exact routing is. And they're going to be it's coming back home, I guess. So it's only half their trip, in essence. But the cash price, if they wanted to pay for the same tickets up front for the 2 of them, it would have been $9,300
each.
Right?
Wow.
No, it would have been $9,300 total. But 40, but the value of those miles is probably $2,500, right? In terms of, so for $2,500 in miles, roughly, because he earned them, got them free from credit card points or whatever. He got seats that were worth almost 4 times as much, except for the fact he has to pay the taxes. He was kind of complaining about the taxes, and we just said, it's the EU, baby. They're a bunch. They're gonna nick you one way or the other. I hate the EU.
That's right.
So I think he referred to in the text. He says, I think he called them socialists. It's like, well, for a lot of the EU, that's true.
That's right.
Anyway, back to business here. So we have, coming back to home turf, we have the end of temporary protected status for the Haitians, and I guess, I don't know if it's all the Ethiopians or some of the Ethiopians, but so they can't legally hold a job. They'll have to go back to the home country in all likelihood. Now, I do understand, the argument in the sense of how this is going to upend the healthcare industry, because a lot of Haitians work in that home healthcare sector, they work in rehab centers and nursing homes, and they get paid very little money to do things because I met enough of them when my mother was in and out of the nursing home during the last several years of her life. And so, they kind of form a backbone. Them and a lot of Africans, they're kind of the backbone of those home health care and all that kind of stuff. But we can figure this out.
We'll find other backbones.
Yeah, we'll find other ways of dealing with it in the long run. I don't have necessarily. So I think if you're not here legally, I don't know if you've been here 30 years and you're not here legally, and I realize that Haiti is no paradise by any stretch of the imagination, but what's the reason for you staying here exactly? Can you not go somewhere else besides Haiti? Can we send you back to Haiti, but then you find another country that's amenable? Because it seems like a lot of places in Europe will take you in anyway. I don't know. What's your?
I mean, we were talking about this because we went through there, Springfield, Ohio, when I was on my trip, and so we guys are talking about this, and the thing about that is, it's like there's still. I mean, this is the way, like, the left does stuff. Okay. The left's claim on that is that it never happened, right? All that started with 45 people complaining to Vance and Sherrod Brown that this was going on, that they were having problems with them. They couldn't drive. They were stealing the pets. I think it was cats that they were after.
Yeah.
Right. And they had film, they had video, they had stuff showing it. And so it was just like, oh, they're lying. Well, why? Because the city manager said so. Okay, well, the city manager has a pretty good vested interest in not having these things thought about his town, right? Oh, we got a bunch of people here, causing a lot of car wrecks. So they drive, but they don't really know how to drive, and, eating the pets and otherwise disrupting the community. And, no one believed them, and no one believes them to this day. But I mean, what they were going through was very real, and they all talked about it. It's documented. It's not. There's no question of whether it's actually true. But the media's reaction is, this is not true. Well, yeah, it is. It is true. I don't know if I hurt anybody's feelings, but it is true, and it should be dealt with. It came from the Democrats. If the person is someone that they're in the they view as a protected type of status of the victim, then they're going to come in and, oh, we're for the victim. Well, the victim has done this and this and this. Oh, we're still for the victim, right? We started down this road and we're not leaving it. So temporary means temporary, and the people were brought here. They had a temporary problem. The temporary problem's over. You can go back. We're free to say you can go back. And yes, it's true. And like, it's getting, the left is making a big deal. They're like, well, they let in 3,700 Afrikaners, right? People from South Africa who are legitimately worried, that they will be killed if they stay in South Africa, right? Because the South African government has kind of said, that's why I worry about Brent Bozell being over there, is they have said, if you kill white people, we don't really care, right? We're not really going to do anything about it. So, yes, no, they're not, those people are not wrecking cars or stealing cats or whatever. And so, no, there's no push to kick them out of the country, and there shouldn't be, right? I mean, if they get their time, but how you conduct yourself has a lot to do with, like, how much hospitality we should extend to you. And it should have that, right? If you blend into America, then that's better than the people who do not blend into America.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really I really don't want to get into the weeds on some of the accusations that are made, because it's easy to make accusations. There may be some video and stuff like that, but the key word there is, like you said, it says temporary protected status, and right. Temporary is not 10, 20 years or whatever. That should not be the definition of temporary. Temporary should be just a really short time period, get everybody, they can sort this out and then figure out where do you go from there. whether or not that means they return you to your home country, which the United States recognizes is not a good place for them to be, right? It's not a good place for Haitians to be, as in Haiti, but you can probably figure a way to put them in a safe place, but it doesn't have to be the United States.
That's right.
And
you know, you need to prove individually that you, in particular, not your group or some Haitians, but you individually could be subject to persecution if you go back.
Right. This is not like a class action lawsuit, right?
Right.
You're not a protected class. You are protected individuals because there's something you can prove as to what would happen. Your life would be in danger, your family's life would be in danger should you be forced to return to your home country. But you don't get that protection just because you're a Haitian. You don't get the protection, you know, if just because you're Ethiopian. I mean, if they decide to go and say the same thing happens to the Venezuelans, all of that. I mean, you need to show why this has been part of the problem with, you know, with the immigration, is that we would give, you know, asylum to people, but it tended to be broad based, right? I mean, if you were from Guatemala and there had been an uprising or wherever, you know, everybody thought, okay, well, I've got that card. I'm going to come in there because I can play that card. But it's like, even if you were living okay, but you didn't like what was going on, you just wanted to get away.
Economic migrants,
yeah, you know, forget it. I mean, it's like, so, you know, something.
Well, it's not to be clear. So it's not really forget it. It's go apply, be in line, and do it legally. Right. We're not unwelcoming. We're saying do the process.
Right. I mean, you don't stay here under that status. I mean, if you really want to stay here, figure a legal path to become a U.S. citizen, and I'm fine with that. Right. You know, but we don't. What we're trying to say too, I think, is just that we don't. You know, we're not. Our hospitality, as you refer to it, you know, doesn't have to extend to having just, you know, hordes of people from these different countries under TPS that have zero incentive for U.S. citizenship. Give them an incentive, you know. I mean, you know, look, if the Trump administration, you know, came out and said, okay, look, we're going to end temporary protected status for your group in a year or whatever, but if you have filed the paperwork, if you actually are doing things where you're moving along the immigration status where you will become a resident, you know, you will become American, you are going towards citizenship, then that's fine. You can stay until you get that procedure. Though there will be an end date for that too. That's not endless either. That's fine. But if you're showing zero interest in becoming a U.S. citizen, you just want to live here because it's just better for you, like you said, economic migrant. It's like, no, that's not the way it should be. It's like, I'll take a person who's come under duress, where the life has been threatened, because there are a lot of bad people in the world running governments, a lot of corrupt governments out there. But I don't think that we could just blank check, open it up and say, everybody, if you're economic migrant or whatever, you can come in. That's not not what we want to do.
Get in line behind the people doing it right. The people that signed up to do it right from their home country, they should get the top priority to me. You know what I mean? All right. What is up? Okay. You all right? I think we froze a little bit. The interwebs, I still say we're about 60% of where we need to be on all this stuff. Cell phones, 30%.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, so we have, it's just, they just, I think the idea of ending TPS is a move in the right direction.
I think so too. I also think we were talking about the election. I think that's a good move election wise, right? I think the people who would vote for Republicans in Congress want to see action on immigration. They want to see temporaries getting untemporaried, and they want to see people getting deported, and they want to see, which I guess we had a record number of deportations last month. So, they want to see action on this stuff. They want to see tough immigration policy.
All right. Got a few more things to go. Governor Beshear wants a little more show cause or something from Mitch McConnell. I guess he's aiming to try to see if he can't find a way to appoint a successor to McConnell.
He doesn't get to a point, though.
I don't think he. Yeah, I don't. I think. I mean, but he's trying. I think he's trying to do some end run or something. Right?
Yeah, he's got some kind of thing going on where he wants to play a role in it, but it's not like he gets to just install some Democrat. And didn't Mitch do another "I'm alive" thing the other day?
I think so. I think he did something the other day. So it's like he's still here.
I mean, you got to remember, Mitch has always been pardon me, lack of a better term, jackass in every way. That's what made him a great majority leader, right? Is like he could be as jerk as you needed to be to get something done. And so I think when people say, Mitch, you got to tell us where you are and that you're alive and you're coming back and this and that and the other, and Mitch takes his own sweet time. When he deems that it needs to be actually done, he does it, and not before. He's always no one's ever operated on their own schedule like that man.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not necessarily exactly apples to apples, but I mean, we have had, other senators, other congressmen, who have fallen ill or something happened to them.
Maxine Waters hadn't been heard from in several weeks either.
Yeah, I mean, we could see the deterioration with Dianne Feinstein.
Right.
I mean, there are things there, and you don't. As long as when it's a Democrat controlling and their Democrat is running the state, and it's one of their representatives, they're quiet. When it's a Republican, and the Democrats, is the governor, they're like, we need to find out where this person is. We need to, we got to give them a cognitive test or something, and all this stuff. So they're hypocrites. There's a double standard. But as a Democrat governor, he can't just go in and say to the Republicans, so I'm going to appoint a Democrat to caretake the rest of Mitch's term. That's not the way it works. But he definitely.
Thankfully, too, there's not a lot of votes left, right? They're going to probably a little session in September, and then they'll break until after December after the election, and they'll come and pass the tax extenders and whatever they need to do to get us into the new year.
Yeah, and he wasn't shooting. He wasn't shooting to do 10,000 votes, consecutive votes like Susan Collins, right? So. Yeah. She's just the Iron Maiden in that stuff. I mean, she's just amazing. It's a lot of votes. It's a lot of votes to be present for.
Right.
And she's I mean, she's not terribly old yet, but it's a grind. We've talked.
What did we decide? 78 something.
I thought we said 73.
73. That's right. That's right. She was much older than us.
Yeah. Yeah,
unlike us, she looks old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, she makes every vote. Mitch doesn't. Maxine doesn't. A lot of them don't have great voting records, but most of them do. Like I remember, I worked for Tom Davis, and Tom, it was both a blessing and a curse that we lived right by the district, right? That he could go into the district to go home every night, because for one thing, he's at more Eagle Scout ceremonies than anybody in Congress, right? Because he can be there, right? You don't really have an excuse. But the second thing is like I've had this deal. I've had it where I have basketball practice, right? And there's a couple of places within 600, 800 feet of my house where we could have practice. And sometimes I get those gyms as practice gyms, right? And it's the hardest thing to make it on time to those practices, because I literally could leave at 5:28 and be there at 5:30, right? But if you can leave at 5:28, you end up leaving at 5:29 a lot, and then you're late, right? You know what I mean? So like, when you get those things too close, then then it gets kind of harder to be actually.
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, you take those things for granted, and then just So yeah, I mean, and you when things like that disappear, then you really miss them. I mean, it after Gold's closed their gym that was a mile and a half from my house, I'm like, and then now I'm forced to drive a whopping 6 miles down the road every morning to go to the other gym. That seems like a terrible sacrifice for me.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
last 5 miles of that, you can barely hang on.
Yeah. I know. I get to the mile and a half. I'm like, I used to be here by then.
That's right. I'd be in there.
It's like, what am I still doing on the road? Ugh. All right. A few other things. So the RNC is beating the DNC in terms of at least cash on hand, net cash on hand by a country mile. It's amazing. I don't even know if we've ever seen anything quite like this before. The report had $128 million plus for the RNC and $16 and plus million for the DNC. But
more than that debt, right?
Right. But their debt is like 18 something. So they're $2 or $2.5 million negative.
Right.
We're 97 days from an election. You've got to have more cash on hand. Is this a failure of Ken Martin?
Well, it's a failure of a lot of things. Like they have all these little civil wars in their party, right? So now you have the Democratic Socialists against the establishment, which has woken up and said, "Oh my gosh, if we don't stop these people, we're going to lose every election for 100 years." You have, the pro-immigrations against the anti-immigrations. You have the Muslims against the the left keeps thinking the Muslims will jump in on them, like on the gay stuff, and they're like, no, they're worse than us, right? They want to kill them, throw them off buildings, and all that kind of stuff. So they have, they're fighting all these fights, right? And you have the Hispanics saying, all our resources are going to. I mean, black people are saying all our resources are going to other people, right? When you live by resource allocation, you die by resource allocation, right? So, they're all, all these guys are like, we're not getting out of this what we thought we were going to get out of this. So their little coalition's in trouble. They're having trouble raising money. The organization, I guess he threw a phone at somebody or something the other day. Ken Martin. But I think what you're seeing is, the New York Times doesn't like him, and they're every kind of like dirty story they can come up with to get him ousted. They're going to try to do. So, I mean, a lot of this, if you look at like the origin of where all these little tales of woe come from on Ken Martin, that's where it is. The fact is, they don't really have much to sell. What are they for? What would they do if we elected them? Oh, we would investigate Trump. Well, I think the country has finally decided that, whatever you think of Trump, it's not going to change, right? And so, what are we investigating? You're not really going to prove that he did anything illegal. You can put him in jail for it. If you could, you would have already done it. We've got to show the Epstein files. There's nothing in the Epstein files that remotely implicates Trump in anything except turning Epstein into the cops. And they don't have the goods to they can't go talk about a platform because they don't really have one. So they're in a lot of trouble on that, and it has more to do with message than money, because people will give the individual candidates, like that Tallarico guy down in Texas. He's not short of money. The party might be, but he's not, right? He's raised a lot of money for himself. So it's that kind of thing.
All right, we got a few more things here quick.
But I will say this, okay, before I go on, because there was one thought I wanted to share, is they start earlier on TV than us, and they get a big edge in like how the voters understand the issues, because they always have had more money. And so you start seeing their commercials in early September, and they're drumming these messages in, and we come in late October. That was all wrong. I was like, oh, you're just running your mouth, right? We've been listening for 3 months. We've got this story straight in our head. right? You're contradicting it. That's just electioneering. So now we will. I don't know if we'll do it because Republicans, they know it's gold in my ear said of Abba Eban, they never pass up an opportunity to pass up an opportunity. So we may not do it, but we have a chance to get a big messaging victory, right? Control the airwaves early.
All right. Just quickly too, Mamdani has unveiled his city-run grocery plans. It's going to cost a lot of money to build. I mean, it's city property. He says, they're going to have 30% discounts on some items, and they're going to once a month set those items and everything like this. They've got the bodega owners and a lot of other small grocery owners up in arms. They are raising money to sue New York City about this because it could theoretically put them out of business. Because the city-run grocery stores will not have the same cost structure in a lot of ways that the bodegas will. The smaller place, they'll have more buying power. The other things, but if they lose money, the taxpayers pay for the losses. If a bodega or some other small grocery store loses money, it comes out of their pocket. So this is just. We're watching this socialist experiment in New York, but I believe it has failed everywhere else it has been tried in the U.S. Other governments have tried this in what they call food deserts, and they're usually closed within a couple of years because the losses are too severe.
That's right, and they don't get used for surprisingly. You would think, oh, here's a grocery store, everything's cheaper. There'd be lines around the block, but it's not really how that works.
Yeah.
Now we talked about this. New York is kind of a unique situation because you don't really have a lot of land. Grocery store and a parking lot. You got to have a parking lot because most of the people are going to try to drive there to put the groceries in their car. Some people try to do that through Uber and whatnot. But I think New York's even hard on the Ubers, right? You got to take the cabs because they want to control the cab. They want to control all that action, right, and get money off of it. So. Coming in and building, giants and Safeways, if that was going to happen, it would have already happened. So, if he builds big grocery stores on lots, he can get, much cheaper than anybody else can get because the city owns them. He'll have a chance at this stabilizing. But you're right. Like, I think Chicago had like 11 of them and they've all closed. The last one closed in the last month or so. Kansas City had one that closed. Most people who fool with this have found out that it doesn't work because you're talking about an industry where 2-3% margins is considered really healthy, and to operate a business like that, it requires a lot of volume and a lot of market awareness, and who thinks that's coming out of the Mamdani city government?
Yeah, I mean, it probably have to be a very limited operation anyway, because it costs a lot of time and money if you're going to stock a lot of perishables, and those have short shelf life. I mean, you can't keep some of those stuff on a shelf for more than a few days at a time.
Right.
You've got to turn that over, and then after that it becomes spoiled or whatever. You got to give it away. This thing is destined to fail.
You just hit on something that I hadn't thought about that, but because we used to go around when I lived down Alexandria, and we would go to the grocery stores on the day, we'd go whenever you show up. They have a big pile of stuff that ran out of the expiration date is that date. And they've taken it off the shelves and they just give it to you, right? We'd give it to shelter, put it in shelter or whatever. And with the bread, bread gets you have to get rid of bread. And vegetables, you get lettuce, you get tomatoes, whatever they had, right? And we ended up with a carload of stuff sometimes. Sometimes it was just a box or two, but sometimes you were loaded down with stuff that went bad that day. Now those are big corporations who've learned to A, take those losses, and B, minimize them, right? Don't order 15 things of lettuce if you're only selling 12 things of lettuce, right? And so that's the kind of precision that has to go into this for it to survive. And, you're not going to get that, with a city-run agency. You're just
Right. Right. Okay. So a couple of short things. So Apple has yesterday briefly they hit the $5 trillion mark in market value. I checked this morning; they've hit it again. I don't know if they're still there as of while we're talking here, but they've now overtaken Nvidia, which held the crown for a while and had been the first company to do so. But we're in a chip bear market right now. So Nvidia's losing ground. So it's Apple, the king of the hill again on the stock market in all that they say and they do. I don't know. I think their earnings are coming out today or tomorrow or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, so Apple is just hitting on all cylinders. Sophie Cunningham has become kind of the call celeb, and she called out, defended. She didn't want transgenders playing in girls' sports. Right. She's been vilified for that. Brian Urlacher, the great Chicago Bear, said, he thought it was great. I mean, he says, I got a daughter, she's gay. He also said, it's like the WNBA. He says, they're gay anyway, right? So he goes, and I'm all right. I'm all right with it. It's like, kind of like, you leave me alone, I'm fine. Just go whatever, do your thing. But having the transgender, and so I mean, she was clear that she wanted to protect the young girls, that was her thing, and that she didn't back off from that. And they go play a game, and where were they? Were they in Portland or Washington State or wherever?
Portland,
and,
yeah.
And there was a pro Cunningham demonstration, and the Fever didn't really know anything about it. It wasn't a huge one or whatever, and then there were some anti people and stuff like that. But it's definitely upsetting the apple cart in the WNBA, which is very sympathetic to LGBTQ rights and everything like that. But they have one of their stars taking a stand.
Yeah, and they despise her. The league despises her. Okay, so she did the deal where it was a fight started that and so she pointed at who I don't know if you see.
Yeah.
Right. So she just pointed. All she did was point. And
that's so become the big thing, right? That whole meme.
Yeah, and it blew up. It was viral. So the players' union, has said, do not use that image or anything to do with that in any promotional materials. Like, we're not showcasing Sophie pointing, because what is she pointing at, right? She's pointing at, this agenda of the league that, it's okay to beat up the straight people and the white people, they're not protected. They get fouled. We don't call it. And you'll see refs like glaring in at it, and not call it. It's like, girlfriend, what are you looking at? It's right in front of you. So
yeah, I mean, I have a hard time when if I do look at them, it's like, so who is dating who, or who's married to who?
yeah, and that's the thing. We were talking about this earlier this morning. It's like, if we never really, you never had guys where like there's two guys dating on a team, two guys dating each other on a team, right? You had a few gay athletes out there, and people knew who they were. The Redskins had Jerry Hall. Remember, it was a tight end. Right. And they all knew. And so he just did his own thing and they did their thing. But now they're teammates. Your lover is on the team. And to me, that's like exponentially more explosive, potential for you get in a lover's spat, she's wide open, but you won't pass it to her. I mean, I've seen kids get mad at each other and do that for far less than So, I mean, I know that the human mind is capable of producing this thought. So, it'll be just interesting. And I think that league, it needs that to die down. It needs to be about this player's good, that player's good, debate which ones are good. I mean, that's, the NBA, is still fueled by, who's better, LeBron or Michael Jordan, and they're strong followers on both sides. And, people will go nuts if you say the other one. You just don't know, so like you have these debates, that's what's good for sport. But like, all the love stories and bitterness and, all that is like, you're driving people away from your league. People they don't like that. That's not what they're there for.
All right, Brian, you have 1 minute to talk about some media outrage from MRC.
Media outrage from MRC is they've been running stories where they analyze who has covered which issues. Like, for instance, the Graham Plattner was the Senate candidate in Maine who had to drop out finally after allegations surfaced of him assaulting a girl, right? Some woman said he assaulted her. And it was just the latest in a long line of stuff, right? Because like before that happened, we already knew about the Nazi tattoo and, the other women who had complained about him and the thing in the outhouse and all that kind of stuff. So, we already had all that in the public record. We knew about it, but the other side did not know about it. One of the things that's happened in America today, this is get pointed out by this stuff, is one side is way more informed than the other. Our side is way more informed than them because we see their media and we see our media, right? They see their media and they don't see our media. And so things like Graham Plattner, this Al Sayed guy in Michigan, is running for Senate in Michigan, crazy anti-American, Jew-hating rhetoric that no one knows about because, the press summarily ignores it. So that's what MRC is doing, is saying, here's the story that's been ignored, by all the media, right? So that's the one today.
Okay, it's a little bit over a minute. I may get a bell so I can train you. Like,
I'll work on my little deals and
practice.
There you go.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will see you next week with another edition of Accuracy in America.